Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. We are on to episode 7 of season 5. This is the second part of our two-part episode, and the title of this one is Emily. Brian, how does this stand in the legacy of X-Files?
It's I think I'm not going to tell you. I think in future we need to let you kick off by guessing where it sits, because I think sometimes the things I can say can affect which side of the mark you decide to guess on. So 217 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think this sits on the IMDb ranking?
Where did Christmas Carol sit again? Can you remember?
119.
119. Okay, 143.
143. Okay, that gives me an indication as to where you're going with this. So yeah, okay, it's 129.
Right.
So
Okay.
Not too far off. You look at that, then I think most people would probably consider both parts to be on fairly equal footing. But yeah, it's mythology episode. It's the usual thing I say when it's a mythology episode. But like for me, I think both of those, as far as their scores go, as far as their rankings go, are pretty low to what we're used to seeing mythology episodes being.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly the last set when we had Redux, that was like top 5, top 10 kind of thing.
It'd be interesting to see where this lands on all mythology episodes. Maybe at the end of
if we just found, if we just looked at where how they ranked the mythology episodes and just the mythology episodes. I might put that ranking together at some point, and we can feed it in every time we do mythology eps. But yeah, okay, so there we go, 129 out of 217. But let's get into it. It's the 7th episode of season 5, which so far hasn't had a stinker, hasn't had a bad one. Let's get into it. see if we break that chain. Okay, so we start with my favorite kind of X-Files intro, which is a overly poetic voiceover to some dreamy imagery.
Where I died.
Yeah, exactly like Field Where I Died.
God.
So yeah, it's Scully walking in the sand, and then she finds her cross, she picks it up, and then her face kind of fades into sand, and it's actually quite a nice effect. But as with The Field Where I Died, it's overly poetic to the point where I'm like, yeah, I don't do poetry. This means nothing to me. It's just a bunch of fancy words, and I don't know what you're saying to me.
It's not a grabber.
No,
it doesn't. No. It doesn't grab a hold and go like buckle in. You know. It's more akin to like get a nice cover over you and settle into the couch.
Yeah.
Be prepared to fight sleep.
Yeah, maudlin. It's a really maudlin kind of opening, which I think at this point in the series, it's alluding to the fact that she's had to deal with mortality fairly recently in her cancer. But I think, given that this is the second part of last week's episode, I'd imagine anyone watching this for the first time on the back of that would probably be able to put 2 and 2 together as to where this is heading. So, yeah.
Well, the thing is we've just spent a full episode looking at her mortality, looking at her inability to have children, looking introspectively into Scully herself.
Yeah.
Don't need this. You don't need this at the start.
It's like I say, as soon as we have one of our main characters talking poetically with dreamy imagery. I'm just like, yeah, this isn't a grabber for me, but
No.
whatever. Moving on. So we open up after the opening credits with Mulder arriving at the children's centre where Emily is being looked after. Scully is playing with Emily, getting very motherly already. And Mulder watches for a while, and it seems you get the sense that he feels like he's intruding a little bit from his body language. He's trying to kind of give Scully some privacy with Emily, and also respect what it is Scully's going through right now. But he eventually goes over and tries to interact with Emily, who's fairly non-responsive until Mulder pulls a really kind of goofy face at her, which is quite amusing. And then he takes Scully to one side to tell her that basically he's done some research, and it turns out Emily's mother is a fake. So the woman that is listed on social services,
Anna Fugazi, is it?
Yeah, Anna Fugazi. Yeah. So he believes basically that what this points to is that Emily was not born of natural means. And he says, no matter how much you love this little girl, she is a miracle that was never meant to be.
I kind of like this sequence at the start, especially when Mulder goes up to them. It feels almost like a little surrogate family for a brief moment. But I like the way that it's edited, and you can have, without any words, Mulder being the profiler that he is. He looks at the necklace, which is now on the little girl. He looks at Scully and the way she's doting on this girl, and he just kind of assesses the situation quietly. But you get that as the viewer through it, which I think is wonderful when they do things like this.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like as well that it does set up this question, this notion of who's responsible for creating life. You know, who gets to say whether someone lives or dies? Because, like, we take it for granted that you get pregnant. That's the natural way. Boom. But like these days, we also have in vitro and various kind of genetic tinkering that helps people to have children. And it does. And obviously, this was made in the mid-90s, so that was around the time that kind of stuff was really coming into its. It was in its infancy, really, that kind of stuff. So I think it is raising those questions of, hang about, do we have the right to do this? If the baby isn't born by natural means, do we have the right to create what appears to be human life, essentially in a test tube or through other means, genetic tinkering? And I think Mulder here suggests that that's not the case by saying that it's a miracle that was never meant to be. And I think towards the end of the episode, and we'll get there when we get there, that opinion changes slightly. And I think it's very good at highlighting. We'll get there when we get there. But right. I'll plant that seed because I do want to talk about it towards the end of the episode. I do think it gives a bit more heft to the episode, a bit more weight. And you may agree with the stance or you may not, but the fact that it's there, I appreciate.
I kind of feel that I didn't really get that per se, but throughout the episode, I feel as if it does touch on the fact of why we have children, the choice to do it, and the reason behind having it.
Yes.
Valid reasons against non-valid reasons.
Yeah.
But again, we'll discuss it further on.
So Mulder waits to testify when his best bud, Bill Scully, tells him that they're ready for him.
I mean, did they ask him to turn and snarl at the camera? Because it's like he's portrayed as a villain. It's just he's more evil than the smoking man at some points. The way he just lingers around.
Such a douche. He's just a grade A douchebag. It's like, man alive. It's like, Bill, do you realize that your sister is alive right now, potentially because Mulder went and did things that you were telling him not to do?
No, we won't try this new radical medicine. Just go towards the light. Just go, Scully.
So Mulder tells the hearing that Scully had her ovaries taken from her. I say it's a hearing, it's just one guy. There's no panel or anything. It's just like one dude who gets to decide. He says that Scully has had her ovaries taken from her. That's a scientific fact. That's they've examined a body. That's something that can be proven, and that it's likely they were used to conceive Emily. He also knows this because he found her ovaries back in Redux when he was going through all those files, and he found one on Scully, and it led to it. So if you remember, he didn't tell her. So this is literally him not just telling this panel, but telling Scully. So when you look at the look on Scully's face here, she's like, "This is news to me, bro." So it's like, but yeah. So these appear. What have I written there? These appear to be This appears to be brand new information for Scully. Why create? So this is essentially the question that arises: why create this child, then put it up for adoption? Who knows? But it is Scully's child, is what Mulder replies. So the guy asks a valid question. Like, why create this child only to put it up for adoption? Which obviously is a investigative avenue that our agents need to now pursue. But it doesn't stop the fact that genetically this is Scully's child.
Yeah.
Anything to add on that scene?
No, I think you kind of covered it all there. I'd say it's almost a little underplayed. It should feel like it's maybe a bigger revelatory moment, but it's just like you say, in a bland room with one guy and
Okay, so we go from there to Bill's house, the lovely warmth of Bill Scully's house, where everyone is welcome. So Mulder and Scully chat on the couch about why he didn't tell her, and he gives the age-old excuse for never telling anybody anything, which is to protect you. I thought I was protecting you. When has that ever protected anyone? So the phone rings and it's dead air. Mulder traces the call back to the children's center. No Melissa's voice on this one. Maybe they only wanted to pay her for the one episode.
Definitely.
Could save a bit of money here by not having her in both, but they'll get it because they saw the last episode. Well, Mulder and Scully bang on the door of the children's center, and they go in and check on Emily. She's burning up, and Mulder finds a scar on the back of her neck. Very, very reminiscent of the things we've seen in the past with like the alien bounty hunters and things. And it just I
didn't put two and two together at that point.
Right.
It didn't. No, it's not until later on in the hospital that we get to that. That was like, oh, okay, right.
Okay.
But just
so they're checked out at hospital, and they have a biopsy that almost kills the nurse, basically, or the doctor. So Mulder's like watching what she's doing, and she starts picking this scab thing off the back of Emily's neck, and that's when Mulder's like, oh, no. He's banging on the door. And he's a bit too late to let that penny drop.
I'm watching this sequence and I was lost, Brian, like completely lost in what was happening.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm watching this and the doctor's out talking to Scully. Mulder's watching this and I'm thinking, this is someone nefarious. This doctor who's got a needle in that, and Mulder's like, stop. And I'm like, oh,
right.
What's she doing? And then it's like, obviously when they burst out the wind, the green stuff comes out, and then and I was like, okay. I don't know why I was so lost in this scene whatsoever, but just I'd say bonus points for the special effect of the neck. The kind of the cracking sound almost when they pop it. It's just
a bit gnarly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bloody weird.
But I think it's just there's a lot of little moments in this episode, I think, where the characters are in on things before we are. And if you watch the episode a second time, once you're in on it, you get it. So it's definitely an episode that rewards a repeat viewing. Like the scene we talked about with Scully finding out for the first time. Like, you're looking at the look on her face and you're like, is this the first time she's finding out? In which case, why is Mulder choosing now to say it? And surely he would have said before going into this hearing that he was going to say it, just to prepare her for it. So you're busy asking all these questions while the scene's playing out. So that kind of, and I think it's the same with this scene, which is, what's Mulder seen that we've not? Is she a dodgy nurse? Why is he why is he banging? Why don't you just go in there and stop her? And then why isn't she stopping? Why is she just ignoring it? So you're asking all these questions as the scene's playing out, which is it is like, it's kind of confusing. Once the scene's finished, it's not, but you're always kind of playing catch up with, okay, I have to go. I'm playing that scene back in my head now, and now I know what happened. Whereas normally stuff unfolds and you get it because it's unfolding in a way that you're meant to understand it right there and then. So Mulder and Scully chat when the doctor comes to say that that Dr. Cauldron refuses to transfer Emily's medical records. Because he's a douche.
So, he certainly is.
So Mulder goes to see Cauldron and basically roughs him up a bit. This is Mulder acting all tough and very un-Mulder-like, to be honest.
But it's great, Brian, because it's like, although I don't buy the fact that he's this emotionally invested in it, like, I don't feel as if it's built up to that level, if you know what I mean. But I do like the fact that he kind of snaps and takes things into his own hands, because this guy is stonewalling him.
Well, I just think, I don't think necessarily that the emotional investment here comes from Emily so much as the impact he knows that Emily is going to have on Scully. I think he is this protective of Scully. So yeah.
But I do love the fact that he starts to smack him up and put the gun in his face and just threaten him, just rattle his cage.
Yeah.
I love when the guard comes in and just watches. Like that's a particular favourite of mine.
I love his little Terminator reference as well at the end when he's like, I'll be back. All right, Terminator. See you later. Okay, so Dr. Cauldron leaves in a rather kind of hurried state. Doesn't realize that Mulder is staking the place out, waiting for him. So Mulder follows him. Meanwhile, Scully tells Emily they're going to do some tests. And she watches her have an MRI, which we don't see any flashbacks.
No. But
the way it's shot, like, we know that, well, like, I don't know about you, but as the camera was like, it was kind of coming in on Scully as we could hear the MRI. So the MRI was doing its kind of noises.
Yeah.
And I was honestly, like as the camera was getting closer to her, I was expecting us to see flashbacks to when she was on the table with the pregnancy thing, and the, you know, when she'd been abducted. But it doesn't. We just see her face, and it's like, and then that's it. It cuts to the next scene. But
and I think that's the crux of this episode for me. Like when we cut to Scully and we see this scan being taking place. Like I know the emotional impact it's supposed to be having on Scully, but I don't really feel it, and I don't care either.
Right.
Like I seem to have lost interest. This relationship between the two of them, I know it's paternal in a way, but I just don't feel it. It feels all kind of rushed and just wrong, and it doesn't sit right with me.
Mm.
And it's hard to be invested. So it feels, when it gets to these moments of Scully looking pensive and worried, I kind of lose interest.
Yeah. I feel like this should have been a 3-parter. And I feel like rather than just letting Emily get ill this quick, the second part should have been about building that relationship between Scully and Emily. Because in the first part, Emily practically says nothing anyway. She, to be quite honest, she quite frankly looks like one of those scary kids that you'd find in a film like The Omen or something like that. So we go straight from that to her being ill and Scully being super like protective of her, and it doesn't quite feel earned. Whereas if this had been a 3-parter and that second part had been about, and maybe even bringing Mulder in, and we see this almost surrogate parental kind of relationship. But I feel like we've missed the midsection there. So it doesn't feel earned.
It's like that connection takes pretty much one sequence in the first episode when they're in the car, and as we said in that review, that it just felt clunky and odd. And it's just jumped into this one, and everything's with Emily's happening so quick. I don't buy it. It doesn't draw me into the story.
So Calderon goes to see the assassins from the first episode, the ones who killed the father, and he gets killed as well. So, but it turns out he is of the alien persuasion. So,
don't say the A word, right?
So they basically pull one of the neck spiky things that the alien bounty hunters have. They do him in the neck. He kind of melts away, and they both turn into him. So they're either alien bounty hunters or alien human hybrids that are operating like bounty hunters. So it's like it's suddenly just gone full on conspiracy. But so Calderon I say Calderon because it's not. It's so one of the assassins looking like Calderon leaves, and Mulder follows. So basically Mulder's seen Calderon go into this house, and then 2 minutes later comes back out. So Emily's scans show that Emily's central nervous system is under attack, but not from cancer. It's pretty clear they have no clue what to do. And again, I think hearing this news, we're meant to feel some kind of emotional attachment to what Scully's going through. But again, it's just like, all right. Okay. Calderon comes in and injects Emily with something. So it just randomly walks in while everyone's floating around and injects her. Scully sees him coming out of Emily's room, but when she runs after him to catch up with him, he's no longer Calderon because obviously he's shape-shifted. You think, given the amount of shapeshifters they've come across in their time, they'd trust their eyes a bit more. It's like, no, I saw you. You were wearing that same suit. You're coming with me, bud. So, we're going to run some blood tests. So, although doesn't end well for you, does it, when you do blood tests on these guys? Okay, so we go to. I don't know if I got the name of this right, but like Prangen or Prangun Pharmaceuticals. Either way, some pharmaceutical place. Mulder gets a call from Scully as he's rocking up there and tells her he thinks Calderon was there to treat Emily, not harm her. So obviously these guys are up to something shady. Emily is the result of that shady experimentation. If they lose her now, if she dies, then essentially all of their work is being flushed down the toilet. But they don't want to tell anybody what it is they're doing, which is why he's gone in there, treated her, presumably, because she is essentially an investment for whatever research it is they're doing. So detective from the first episode, he shows up, joins Scully, says he's posting guards on Emily, but he gets confused when she suggests that they might not be needed. I was happy to see him come back, which obviously last episode I think that was quite clear. Mulder goes back to the house that Calderon went to. And it turns out to be a convalescent home where he meets one Anna Fugazi, the so-called fake mum. But she is not of an age that should be the mother of a child as young as Emily, which obviously sets up some confusion. So,
but this is where it gets really kind of fun for me, like this part here, because, well, you know, like, who's going to be called Fugazi? It's fake in Italian, the name, you know, but then obviously we find this woman who obviously isn't the mother of the children, but she starts like babbling and talking about like her beauty treatment, her beauty sleep, and just it just feels odd, and you know something weird's going on here, and you're like, oh, this could be quite interesting. Where's this going to go?
It's my first impression right off the bat is, oh my word, they're using old women and they're impregnating them while they're asleep with these alien human hybrid things, and that's how they're giving birth to them off the books. So these women think they're in for like a treatment, experimental treatment, where they sleep for goodness knows how long, and these guys are basically using them to create bodies, and nobody's going to ask questions because they're probably all like old dears who don't have any family members left and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty twisted, really.
That it really is.
So the MRI says that Emily is dying. Adoption lady arrives, says she's seriously concerned, and Scully can't make clear decisions. But Scully says if they remove Emily from the hospital, they will hasten her condition, and she'll make damn sure everyone knows about it.
Like, I don't like this woman, like just in general, like the court-appointed woman, not for any particular reason. Like what she's doing is her job. To be honest, everything she says makes perfect sense. I think it's just because you're kind of with Scully, but at the same time, like this woman's arguments aren't emotional; they're rational. And Scully's becoming the more emotional one. You know, like, you know, the threats, the last sort of bargaining tool that she has to kind of stop them from doing what they're going to do. But like, I don't know why it is. I just don't like this woman. But again, like, I can't argue with anything she is saying.
It's a parental thing, isn't it? It's like, because we know this child is Scully's from a DNA perspective, then like, because that's another thing the episode calls up, like, that deals with, is that who has the rights? Is it purely down to genetics? If if you are a parent simply because of the genetics, then does that automatically give you the right to make the decisions for that child? So it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm particularly invested, but just because, social services, that kind of area of thing, always makes you clench up, because you can imagine them coming into your own home and trying to dictate like what you have to do with your kids, and you're like, whoa. So there is always that. But like you say, everything she says is kind of on point, really. So Mulder reads names from the home to Frohickey, who's listening in, and Frohickey tells him they all had recent babies. They were all given hormones that typically pregnant ladies would have in abundance, which is because they're old. Obviously, they don't have them anymore. So they have to have these hormones injected into them in order to have the babies. Mulder asks Anna about Dr. Calderon. She tells him about her beauty sleep. So, yeah.
Let's break down Frohickey for a second, because I love this. So Mulder's going through a list of names. These are all women that have just given birth. And the first thing Frohickey thinks is, oh, we're on to a goer here. Are there any there that you think may be interested? These are women that have just had kids recently. And it's just, I love Mulder's retort. He's just like, yeah, I think you're in with a shout here. It's just,
he's such a pervert, isn't he? He's such
really
like, if these women have had babies, chances are they've got partners, but that doesn't seem to be affecting your decisions in any way, shape, or form. Like, man alive, he's such a dirty little perv. Mm-hmm. Emily is put into a chamber. Scully is there. Emily seems to get uncomfortable, so Scully stops the procedure, which, again, it's like, it feels like this, and I hate when people use this term, because often they don't kind of say what they actually mean by it, but it seems forced. Like, what I mean by that is it feels like you're trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. So you've got the square peg, which is the emotional aspect of these characters, the emotion we're meant to be feeling from these characters, and then you've got the round hole, which is the mechanics of the plot by which you reveal these emotional aspects to us. And it's not fitting. You're telling us, look, you got to be feeling this right now, because look at Scully. Look at how emotional she's getting when her daughter is going through this emotional turmoil, this pain. Just look at her face. If Scully's feeling that, then we need to be feeling that. And it's like, no, unfortunately, like the mechanics of the plot are not, the round hole mechanics of the plot are not fitting the square hole emotions that you're asking of us.
Well, what's weird about this sequence is that they're doing a procedure. There's an attendant there that's operating the machine, and the only other person there is Scully, who's emotionally invested with this child. She's not administering care. She's there as a parent. So where's the medical practitioner that's watching what's going on? And then the way she's like, turn it off. And the guy's like, I'm doing it, ma'am. Like, he's just not getting stressed at all. So I felt it was a bit of a weird sequence. Again, I think it's there to force us to feel that connection and emotion that Scully's in, but I don't care.
Which and for you, that's like this is the Scully storyline. It's like, it's not often we're more invested in the Mulder side of things than we are in the Scully side, but I want to stay with Mulder in this one. And I feel like, and I said this at the end of last week's episode, which is that Mulder coming in is almost to the episode's detriment, because all the emotional work we did in the first episode kind of has to take a back seat, because Mulder comes in and he's finding out all this conspiracy stuff, and it's like, well, okay, but that wasn't the episode we were in last week. So yeah,
tough.
Yeah. So Mulder finds old people sleeping. He looks in a fridge, like with medical samples, and he finds an embryo in a jar that moves with Scully's name on the sheet of paper that's attached to it, along with a bunch of other names. So, so that presumably the names on the canister are the women whose DNA is being used to impregnate these sleeping old dears in order to create the embryos that are in these jars. That it's all the evidence is just lovingly laid out.
I like how I kind of throw back to certain sequences we've seen before where women are all like impregnated, and this is kind of older women, and all the babies are being stored in the kind of fridge. Weird, just that kind of mirroring almost was really kind of interesting.
Yeah. So Mulder sees Calderon through the window. He just comes up in his car. So he tries to do a runner, but Detective Kresge stops him. Not entirely sure how he gets there.
No.
That's Kresge. He just appears, and it's like the last time we saw him, he was posting security guards at the hospital.
Yeah.
And then, and then he just like rocks up. I don't know if I missed a line of dialogue that he says as to how he got there, but Detective Kresge stops Mulder, tries to get what he's got in his hand. He's got a gun on him. Who was it? I think it was Bastian. So there's one of our regular watchers on YouTube, Bastian. He came up with a list of some of the most stupid decisions that Mulder or Scully have ever done. And I said we should introduce that as so each episode we should have who takes the award for stupidest decision for this episode. And I think it's got to be Mulder here, because he tells Kresge to take his gun off him and put it on that man, meaning Calderon.
Yeah.
Which Kresge eventually does. And then Mulder says, "Don't shoot him. You can't shoot him." So you've just told him to put his gun on him.
Yeah.
And now he's saying, "Don't shoot him." It's like, what's he supposed to believe, Mulder?
And pointing the gun at I don't know if Mulder knows he's an alien, but pointing a gun at an alien's not really going to do much.
No.
We've seen them shot many times.
Yeah. So, So Kresge basically doesn't listen, and he fires, which obviously sets off the gaseous kind of anomaly stuff, and Kresge goes down. So, so it's a shame they brought him back essentially for 2 scenes just to do something stupid,
just to do him dirty.
Yeah. So Mulder calls it in outside. Then Kresge comes out, tells him Calderon is down, gets in the car and leaves before Mulder realizes it's not Kresge.
Yeah, I think this might be the stupidest decision.
Yeah. He doesn't have to go in to realize that it's not Kresge. He gets to the door and then he's like, "Oh."
Yeah.
So both Mulder and Scully in this episode have essentially made that same stupidity. Okay, so Emily has gone into a coma. Scully is obviously upset. Says Mulder was right. This child was not meant to be. and just wants to be alone. So Mulder leaves, taking the sample that he took from the doctor's office with him. So again, bringing up that theme essentially that Mulder kind of started at the beginning, which is that she's a miracle that wasn't meant to be. So basically, the writing was on the wall with her essentially, and the fact that she's dying kind of essentially means that she shouldn't have been there anyway. So essentially, kind of thing. But so we see Scully lying next to Emily, and then Scully's face kind of morphs into a stained glass window where we see it kind of fades into a church. It's a funeral, Emily's funeral, obviously. Scully's family say goodbye, even though never really had any interaction with her. Like, her wider family never really got to speak to her or see her or anything. So Mulder brings flowers.
Bill is just happy that somebody's died. He's just
happy someone's died. He does seem in quite high spirits, all things considered.
It does.
Mulder brings flowers, says Emily was meant to be found by Scully so that she could love her. And I think, so that's really what I wanted to touch on at the beginning. And I think this is, this is quite a, we're going into quite a delicate subject now. And you know me, I'm a bull in a china shop. So we are currently living in a time where abortion is a very big subject. It's a very touchy subject. We've gone through the whole Roe versus Wade thing. I think we're still going through it in many ways. And I think, again, this is just where I think the episode is coming from. It's not. I'm not going to say it doesn't reflect my own views, because it does. But I understand that might be quite sensitive for some people. So where I think and people may be free to disagree. They may see it differently. They may think the episode sees it differently. But I just think that we start off with Mulder at the beginning of the episode saying this is a baby that wasn't meant to be, which essentially implies that if she died, no harm, no foul, so to speak. Scully kind of reiterates that in the scene just prior to this, where it's almost like she's accepting fate. She's accepting that this child wasn't meant to be. This was her fate. She was always meant to die. The implication there is essentially that it would have been better had she not been born. It would have been better had they pulled the plug, had she been aborted, essentially. You could essentially say she's an analogy. Emily is an analogy for children with birth defects. There's often been the question, should parents have the right to abort if they know that their child is going to have some kind of birth defect? And I think what this final scene here does, when Mulder comes in and he says, essentially that given that Emily's time was only short, it doesn't mean that it was wasted. It doesn't mean it was invaluable. It doesn't mean that she wasn't meant to be, because in the short time she was given, she got to know love from Scully. And for me, that's a really, even though I've not been invested in the Scully side of things, I'm really on board with that point. Now, again, I'm not here to offend anyone. I am pro-life. I think it should be okay to say that. It's just your opinion. I'm perfectly fine with other people saying they're pro-choice. and I'm willing to have a discussion about it. But like I say, it is a very touchy subject. But I do think that essentially this makes a very valid point, a very good point, a very pro-life point, which is that the length that somebody lives is of no consequence. What is of consequence is that whatever time they are given on this earth, are they loved? And I just think that this episode does a good job of illustrating that through these aspects. So yeah. But so Mulder tells Scully that Kresge is pulling through. Calderon's work has all been cleaned up. Shock horror. So there's no evidence. And Scully says there is evidence and opens the coffin, but Emily is gone. Only Scully's cross remains.
Yeah, this had me a bit confused. It's like the body was gone.
Yeah.
Like, where's the body gone? Like did they know it wasn't going to be in the coffin? Is it a symbolic burial?
No. So I think Scully opened the coffin because she was expecting Emily's body to be in there. So what she was essentially saying is there is still evidence, but it's whether or not I'm willing to allow that the body to be autopsied and used as evidence, so to speak.
I just don't get it from the reactions.
I think she's shocked to find that the body's not in there. But again,
somebody's had decided to take her necklace off there, which means a lot to her, and leave it for her.
I don't know, because there's the sand, isn't there? So is it that
I wasn't sure if it was a sand or a sack or something or other.
Right, because I'm like you. It's like if someone's had if someone's come in and they've stolen the body and they've put sand in there so that the coffin still weighs, still has the weight of a child, so that when they're bringing it in, that they're not like, is there even anyone in this? So that would be my first guess. But then I'm thinking, so someone's taken the body to get the evidence, but then they've had the good fortitude to take the cross off the girl's neck and put it in the box in case anybody wants to get it. I mean, it's either that, or because Emily is an alien human hybrid, when she's died, she's turned to dust or something. It's one of those two options, but it's confusing. It's not clear at all. Yeah. It's like the cross still being there suggests that her body is just faded away, turned to sand. And we know that when these bounty hunter people get knifed in the back with that tool, they burn up, they fizzle out. And so I don't know, is it different? Is it different because she's a child? Is it different because she's died kind of naturally, as opposed to having the thing put in the base of the neck? I don't know. It's just too many questions.
It's really, it had me like scratching my head going, am I missing something here? What the heck's going on? Anyway, but we're just going to wrap ups for this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, this has been the worst episode of the season so far. It's not a bad episode. I don't think it's like it wouldn't go into the bottom 5 of any other season. I think it may happen here because this season's been so strong. I'd say at best it's like an average kind of episode. I think after part 1, they really kind of confused the narrative here. They tried to balance the emotional content that Scully has with a more typical kind of X-Files episode, and I'm more interested this one in the typical X-Files episode, because I feel that the emotional string here has been frayed too far. It's not been strengthened in any way. You get that one scene in episode 1 with her talking in the car, and then we jump into as if they've been besties for a lifetime. Like it doesn't feel like there's a real connection there, other than that paternal one.
Yeah.
But I like certain elements. Other moments, I'm just scratching my head going, what's going on here? It feels muddled. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said it should be a 3-parter. And I think you're 100% right. I think more time seeing that connection grow, more investigation from Mulder into the history of the child and discovering more things would have led to a more rounded trilogy of episodes. But I think you nailed it when you said that. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 overall.
I'm going to go with a 3.5 out of 5. There is a lot in there that entertains me. It is mostly the Mulder stuff, but I also do think that it is quite deep from a thematic perspective, not so much an emotional perspective. But I do think the thematics are there. That all the questions it raises about abortion, about the right to life, about who gets to make those decisions, about what constitutes life. So it raises a lot of interesting questions. And as we've said, 3-parter to really flesh that out and really go into it in some depth would have done it a world of good, I think. But 3.5 out of 5 for me.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about next week's episode 8, Kitsunagari.
Yeah, Kitsunagari. It's Japanese, obviously.
Everything has to be shouted with a question mark.
Kitsunagari. So this is a sequel to a previous episode. Yeah.
Right.
This is a sequel to Pusher.
Right. Okay. Why?
You remember Robert Patrick Modell?
Yeah. The guy that can make people do things.
Yeah. So this is a sequel to that episode.
Is it well regarded? Is it not?
It's not as well regarded as Pusher.
Right.
I don't think it's as good as Pusher. Not close. But my memory of it would suggest that it's a slightly above average episode, but not a top 5 of the season kind of episode. So.
Remind me if I'm wrong, but it's Pusher season 2?
3.
Yeah. I do like the fact that they're connecting certain episodes like that, like doing a sequel, because we've had that before in season 1, where we had one at the start and the end. But this is like a season or so apart, which is quite interesting. So I'm kind of curious about that. Should be fun. So, as always, if you wouldn't mind rating us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, we would appreciate that. It allows others to discover our podcast and let us, continue rolling the ball talking about the X-Files. As always, we'll see you next week. Look forward to talking about the Pusher Part 2.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.